we're in good shape.
Yeah, I would imagine that, you know, if there's any problems with the plan, if you want to get in touch with John, and maybe avoid having to.
Okay, but I just don't have it on the tip of my tongue, but I do remember seeing some things come back and forth from Steve reviewing this and basically got to agree on this. And it's an ANRAD at this stage. Okay. Anybody in the audience for Bartlett's Field? So why don't we just continue? Who's holding the book? We can just do this at the next meeting.
All right, so that's February 20th.
Right?
We have a 6:35 and a 6:45 right now.
So 6:50?
6:50. So I'm gonna make a motion to continue Bartlett Fields Realty Trust to February 20th at 6:50 PM of 2013.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Listen, you ever heard of a Tom Rowinski?
Oh, yes.
He walked all of the Crosby property and whatnot with, we've got a group from the Conway School.
Conway School.
Yeah, did they talk to you at all?
The Conway School talked to me back when Marshfield did a similar thing for Carolina Hill.
If anybody, Jason's with Department of Fish and Wildlife, right, Mass? As well as covering for his brother. And he was good enough to have a presentation out here in the fall, right? At the library? Was it?
Yeah, I attended the hearing
Or
presentation
discussion.
was put on about hunting on conservation
Yeah.
land and target shooting.
So it was kind of helpful. Tom Rowinski came out, I hope I'm saying his name right.
Yes.
And we walked a lot of that property. It was really interesting. You know, not only did he remark on deer issues, but just on the forest and understory and all that stuff. It was a pretty interesting morning.
And he's done a similar thing for a lot of land trusts, and he's actually done the Blue Hills,
Yeah.
documenting, you know, deer overbrowsing and impacts on native plants and things like that.
That was an interesting time. We're in the middle of the Conway School doing the same thing for us with all that space on the west side of 3A. So
Mhm.
at some point, we may be picking your brain a little
Yeah,
bit
I'll help
more.
out.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Yep, have a good night.
You too. Amendment for K&E Construction Johnson, Lot 4B and 6, Man Hill and 20 Hood Road, new build.
Good evening, everyone. Kevin Grady from Grady Consulting, representing the applicant for the proposed amended order of conditions. We had a meeting about a month ago on this project. We presented the plan, and the commission closed the hearing. One of the points of discussion at the hearing at the time, I don't know if you were all here or if you recall, we have a drainage basin associated with your stormwater bylaw constructed on the lower part of the lot here. I was under the impression that the applicant wanted that as lawn to use as their yard area. During the discussion, the commission requested that we leave this back triangle area in permanent no-touch zone as mitigation to allow the lawn to be planted right up to the 50-foot no-disturb zone. I agreed to that at the meeting, and it turns out, in talking to my client who was not here at the meeting, they would prefer to have the area in the triangle as lawn because it's level with the house, and it's easier access. It's better for them for, you know, yard use purposes. They would prefer to have that cleared in lawn, and in trade for that, they're willing to plant the bioretention area with native plantings as opposed to planting it as grass. So I've put together a planting plan with approximately 60 plants within that bioretention area. I hope that we can amend the order so that they can use the yard in that back triangle there. Now, the overall project, the house and that portion of the yard are actually outside the buffer zone. The only work really within the buffer zone is between the 100-foot and the 50-foot no disturb zone. So what we're planning to do is clear that, and we need that area there to meet the stormwater requirements. You can see the whole thing is a shallow basin area. So what we'd like to do is clear that and build that to attenuate the stormwater, and what we'd like to do is plant it, with the native plantings to treat the stormwater prior to discharge to that isolated vegetated wetland in the corner of the lot. If you have my revised plan, the planting plan details in the top left corner there. Bayberry, winterberry, some brush.
Richard, any thoughts, or jump around here?
Jump around for a minute.
Kevin? Yeah. Tony?
I got to claim ignorance from what you had received before.
Sorry. Can you say that one more time?
You said that the applicant wanted not to keep this triangle, I guess is what you call it, but to open it up and have that as grass. And what are you doing to mitigate that?
Well, the plan was approved to construct the basin and plant that as lawn. What we'd like to do is construct that basin and plant it with natural vegetation, so essentially it becomes another layer of buffer zone, because we've planted it with, native vegetation and mulch, et cetera. Let it kind of naturalize as opposed to planting lawn and continually maintaining it as such.
So you're going to go through and rip that out and then totally replant it? Is that the idea?
Yes, essentially, yes.
Well-
And we have to rip it out basically because you have a stormwater bylaw for single-family lots, and that is the low gradient point. It's poorly drained soil, so we don't get a lot of infiltration where I could make it a small basin. You also have volume requirements. We're not allowed to increase the volume off the site, so we need to hold that on the site. That's increasing the size of the basin when you have poorly drained soils. So it takes up a large footprint.
Paul?
So you're basically gonna swap where you would've had lawn in the 100-foot buffer, put the lawn in the upland and plant that.
Correct.
Okay.
Doug?
I think what the difference is that when we originally agreed with the corner being vegetated, that's a large area of like trees, shrubs, native and invasives, I'm sure, but it's natural.
Been out there?
Yeah, it's mostly invasive, I'm sure. But it's still what it is all across town. I mean, it's open space. We don't have the best habitat in Scituate in our open spaces that are left. It's a lot of what people would call the garbage species. That's fine. I understand that, but when you went in between the 100 and the 50, originally you were going to clear that area, and that's vegetated now with trees and shrubs and stuff.
Yep.
So to have that be grass and then keep this vegetated, it was kind of a eye for an eye or whatever. You're getting
Swap.
an open area, you're keeping another area. So we said, fine, now you're clearing this area in the corner and you're clearing the area for the detention basin. And you're gonna replant the detention basin, but we're gonna lose that area we were gonna lose in terms of just what it is, open space now, and then we're gonna lose this too. So what I'd like to see is that, like you said, this area becomes naturalized.
Yep.
And is part of the buffer, but it actually gets stated such, so that way if you can look at your plan, say along contour line 46,
Yep.
just inside the 100-foot buffer, you're gonna plant the detention basin with native species. And it's gonna be a low area, and
Correct.
it's gonna be wet.
Yep.
So it's gonna be mimicking wetlands.
It's going to mimic the buffer zone.
The buffer zone. So as it is, I want it to be marked as such, that this is the buffer zone. And I'd like to see along that 46 contour line, either a row of bushes or the markers that say conservation area restriction, some sort of posting that just makes it clear that, yeah, this pretty area down here is functioning, it's there for a purpose. And just because we put flowering native species in there doesn't mean that you can go walking around in there and remulching it or adding other plants. It has to be a naturalized area. In addition, the bylaw states that along the 50-foot wetland buffer line, there's supposed to be plantings every 4 feet on center, so I would want to see at that 50-foot buffer line, in addition, the plantings as they should be. So it would be plantings there, something demarcating it along the 46 contour, saying this is where the wetland starts, or this is where the buffer zone starts, it's conservation.
You've already got that in the original order. You can carry that forward if you want. I think you wanted a limit of bayberry staggered, along that.
Yeah.
Happy to continue that.
Mhm.
You don't need to change that. With these drainage basins, technically we're supposed to maintain the drainage basin so that it functions. They do have a lifespan. I'm not sure how important that is on a single-family lot. We basically are taking the stormwater bylaw, which applies to large projects, and jamming it on these guys. I don't think they'll ever really need to maintain it.
So is there a maintenance plan then, or?
Yeah, it's in the stormwater calculations that were submitted. And basically, it's, if the plants die within the basin, they're supposed to, replant them. If the basin isn't functioning, they're supposed to fix it. It's pretty simple, but, they're supposed to maintain it as a basin.
That's in the original NOI that you submitted?
Yeah, and all your stormwater management calculations,
Yeah.
there's operation and maintenance that goes along with, the infiltration portions of them.
That was based on no plants in it. Are the plants gonna impact, they're obviously gonna suck up some more water, so.
They're supposed to maintain it, that's what I was just trying to point out. If we put
Okay.
those no disturb markers,
Oh, I see what
at that location, there's a little bit of a conflict there. I think it's okay. Basically, we're holding back the volume with this berm in here.
Yeah.
It's really more of a volume basin. Once this berm is built, it's gonna function,
And it
We're
drops
not getting
down like
much
3 feet. so
We're not getting
it's-
much infiltration out of this because the soils are, poorly drained. That's really where your maintenance is necessary, when you're getting a lot of infiltration out of these. We're basically getting no infiltration. So, just putting in that berm. If you want to, put those markers out there, you probably can, but I'm just pointing out that there might be a little bit of a conflict. So we might want to phrase it in such that if, basin maintenance is required, some sort of minimalistic approach to fixing it should be done, ripping out all the plants.
What's the square footage relationship?
I'm not sure if I follow that
Well,
question.
you're going to clear this whole area. What's the square footage of that? What's the square footage of the basin that?
What is this, 120?
Yeah, so that's up roughly 2 inches, right?
Let's see.
By-
Yeah, I don't have a scale, I don't have the area. I have a hard time answering that question for you. It's 50 by, what was that, 150?
So I'm thinking, Todd, that a lot of those trees are in that back portion of what they're calling the triangle. Maybe keep some of that back there. I don't know what's surrounding it on other people's land. I didn't go back there. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's a house up on that, up behind here, and there's another.
I know there's a house on this Brockman property, and there's a house over
There
here. I
is
don't know
gonna
what.
be- Oh, so it's tree line.
Good. I'm thinking there's like 48,000 square feet in this swale piece versus maybe 56 in the triangle. I got a scale if you want to.
Well, the entire lot's 50,000. 49.
So that's 40 feet wide.
4,800 maybe versus
100, yeah.
5,600.
Yeah, 4,800 versus
Yeah.
56.
You wanna try that?
I
See what you come up?
was just checking the thousands.
I think he said 48,000 by mistake, he
I
meant
meant-
4,800.
Yep.
Yeah.
The swale piece that you're building, I'm measuring like 160 by 30, and then I'm thinking that the triangle might be like 140 by 40.
20 scale.
So there's not a huge,
To use the Pythagorean theorem on that?
He's got his shoes and socks off.
3, 4, 5.
I bet you. For winging it, I'm not far.
Oh, it's been spun, what are we measuring, that entire 50 foot? So we have
I don't know how
140
far.
by 50
For the,
for the clearing?
yeah,
That's 7,000. And this here is 80. It's-
What I don't know is how much of this we were allowing them to clear.
well, I think the idea was that somewhere up in here, we were gonna draw a line.
On the
And-
other, there was a proposed.
And this was gonna be some grass
tree
back
line
here now. We're trading.
Where it says proposed lawn on this plan,
Yeah.
just above that, there was originally it said proposed tree line,
Mhm.
and that was where we,
Okay,
it
so
seems
it's
like
from
it
that
was
on.
pretty fair to say, sure, go ahead and cut in between the 150 because you're gonna leave that alone. Now where you're gonna clear them both, it's a little bit, it's a loss.
Right.
Actually, it's, looks like 7,000 to 7,125 I came up with. They're pretty equal.
Seems like they're fairly close. Like I
Yeah.
said, each one of them was a little bit smaller, but whatever, they're about equal.
So, you know, we're enhancing we're doing a stormwater system. We're enhancing the buffer with native plantings. So the stormwater and the buffer zone get improved here. You know, they'd like to do some lawn in here. I'm not sure they're gonna clear the whole thing. I mean, that last 15 feet, really, they probably aren't gonna do anything out there. So in reality,
Yeah.
this section that's like 80 feet wide is useful to them, and then probably about halfway back, once you get to that point, it's kinda narrow, and they probably won't do anything in there.
Careful, you get yourself in a bind the last
Yeah, I'll
time.
get a,
I mean, I think we're
Yeah, I
kinda
think it's
there.
good, yeah.
Yeah, instead of lawn in the buffer, that'll be planted and we'll have lawn in the upland.
Yeah,
And then it's marking off the 50-foot with the plantings there, so.
sounds good. To me. Pat?
Sounds good. I think the lawn is gonna be in the area furthest from the wetland. That's
Right.
where they're creating lawn, so when you're getting some useful vegetation closer to the wetlands.
Yeah.
Are we allowing that lawn to be sprinkled?
I really don't think it matters.
No,
And it's all outside the 100.
I guess that's true, we don't have that.
If they wanna spend their money on that, be up to town to decide whether they can or they can't.
Fair enough.
And I think the other orders did have the piece in it about the herbicides and pesticides. I'm pretty sure that's standard that we put that in there just for public awareness. using herbicides and pesticides next to wetlands is not a good idea.
Okay. Well, we can add it.
Yeah, if it's not. I think
Okay.
it was.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
Anybody in the audience? Motion?
So, make to accept their amendments?
I would
So,
say.
make a motion to accept the amendments as proposed for Man Hill and Hood Road.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Pat.
So we have some orders of conditions. Sharon, 305 Country Way. Oh, did you talk to McSherry, so we gonna vote that, or?
Right, we don't have enough of the members who were at all the hearings, so we're gonna have to continue the vote on that.
So First Parish Road won't get,
Right, at this point, I don't think we can pick a date, because if they wanna be strictly by the 21 days of when the hearing was closed, that would be before our next meeting date, so, we're waiting to hear back from Lenore White and, the engineering firm.
okay. Do we know who can vote? Did you figure that out, Pat?
Yeah, I think Carol has it, there were,
I don't have it right here, but yeah. I figured
yeah,
it
if Penny
out.
was back, it would make it, you could have the vote, but we're not sure when she's gonna return, so. And then there was one person maybe, I think, that would have to read the minutes. You're allowed to miss one of the meetings, one of the.
Right, I
hearing
missed
nights.
the last meeting.
So then if it was okay with the applicant that you read the minutes to catch up, then you'd be able to vote too.
Okay. So we're just gonna post, well, we have to give a date, though.
Yeah.
Well, Penny said she'd be back in 2 weeks from whatever day she left.
Left on the Thursday.
She left on a Thursday, right.
The 31st.
31st, yeah.
So she should be here for the next meeting.
Yes, which would be the 20th. So that's 21 days.
Yeah, Lenore didn't think it would be a problem getting the people to extend to our next meeting, but she hadn't spoken to them yet, so. Gonna make sure.
Well, that's what happens when you extend your project out 6 to 8 months or whatever.
Right. Okay. So why don't we just get a motion to continue this to,
20th?
yep. And if we got enough people, we'll do it, and if not, we'll continue it again.
Do we? Okay, so I'll make a motion to continue the order of conditions for McSherry Brothers Lot 1 and Lot 2, 218 First Parish Road to Wednesday, February 20th.
And we don't have to have a time.
No time.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Sharon, 305 Country Way, wetlands delineation.
I think we need to have Kevin read the minutes from the meeting you missed, and maybe Paul, and then you'd have enough for quorum to vote.
Okay. And you guys got them?
Mm-hmm.
And you've read them?
Yep.
Is that okay with whoever?
Okay. So, that's an ANRAD. We've heard all the testimony about where the wetlands lines are. Does anybody have any other questions before that? I mean, I think we,
Pretty much beating a dead horse, haven't we?
well, I think we've got all the information and our consultant, and we've reviewed it, and we found out a lot more about this tributary, which has no bearing on what our purview for this evening is, excuse me, the wetlands line, intermittent streams, those sort of things that were on the plan. And I think we're good with the locations on those. I'm satisfied
Yeah,
with it.
they seem to be, and they were both in agreement. Butters wetland person was not in agreement, but the two people that were involved were.
Right. Okay. So, a motion to accept those, or that,
So
condition?
moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carbone, 25 Town Way, extension, install a tight tank. Anybody have any issues with those?
Tight tanks are pump ones.
They-
You
Yeah.
pump out a tight tank.
Right. And that's out on the beach.
I know, so we were talking about that cover stick that sticks up out of the ground over the, on a tight tank, it's not really necessary, right?
I wouldn't think so.
No, because you don't expose your
You're not
leach
gonna cover a
field
field
and,
or
right,
anything,
yeah,
so.
there's,
Cover's brought to grade.
It's at grade, is
Brought
it?
to grade so they can get out the pump.
Yeah, so. I'll make a motion to accept Carbone 25 Town Way extension order of conditions as written.
Second?
All in favor?
aye.
Vogel, 327 Central, addition and deck.
I thought it covered everything that we talked about.
Did we ask for the mitigation to be done before the work on this one at all? or-
I don't recall that. No, I didn't think we did.
We shouldn't go away from that, we should stick to that in every case we can.
That's way out of the work area too. That's closest to the marsh area, so you could start with that.
Yeah, they could get that done, they could do the planting and then put up their erosion controls.
Yes, they could.
Landward
You're
of
right.
the.
You're absolutely right.
It's just the season, the time, can they plant when they wanna start working? Which we're not far from spring, I don't know when they intend to start, but.
So we need to amend?
I think it's a good idea.
I don't believe we can take any input on that, Mr. Bjorklund. Thank you. What do you want to add to it?
I think that's a good idea.
That they do the plantings prior to the,
As long as it's not holding up the project, if they're ready to start construction, you know, I mean, if they're out there and they're ready to go and they could put the plantings in, I think it's kind of working with them on it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, I'd agree with that, if it's a time of year that they can't
Yeah, wanna
plant.
hold up.
Right, but if they
maybe-
can,
Yeah.
I agree, always,
It's
they should do it
something-
first if it's
Yeah, we should
possible.
look for a sequence of work too then, so we know what their plan is, and I, personally, I didn't look, I forgot, I should have read in there to see if there was a sequence of work, but,
Okay.
I mean, that's a big mitigation area that
Yeah.
they're proposing on that.
Yeah, no, I think it's great.
Yeah.
So, you okay with that?
Mhm.
All in favor? Let's go.
Aye,
Aye.
second.
Were we that far?
I don't know, but
Make a
Aye.
motion.
We are
Just
now.
keep
saying aye.
Good. What else do we gotta hit on? What have we forgotten? Anybody in the audience first, even
Certificate of compliance,
for?
Seaside Road.
49 Seaside.
Oh.
This was the as-built that was submitted. And this was, whoops, the letter that came with it.
Yeah.
This is the letter from our attorney who was involved in this. Brandon Moss. So we spoke with Brandon basically because we wanted to know if a certificate of compliance could be issued on something where the work in the main project was completed as it was supposed to, but there was some accessory structures and other work that may not have been allowed under an order of conditions. So, Mr. Bang, who's in the audience, he's got a closing this week, and we looked at the order of conditions, and the house is built according to the plan, but there is a shed, which is a structure, and it's in the velocity zone. And there's a letter that came from the engineer that listed a few other things that were beyond what was allowed in the order of conditions. So Brandon Moss has been talking with us this week about this, and he thinks that it's possible to issue a certificate of compliance with the understanding that there'll be an enforcement order for the remaining things. It sounded like a good plan. We could go out there, my recommendation would be that the shed would have to come down. It's it's at ground level, it's in the velocity zone, and it wouldn't be allowed if you came in to get a permit for something like that. Some of the other things, like gravel driveway was put in place, but a big concrete slab was removed from the driveway. So we're taking that up, you know, there's a few pavers, and, you know, there's several things that we could look at and decide what to put into some type of enforcement on it. And Brandon has a statement in there how he thinks it should be worded when we issue the, I think that's in everybody's.
How does the new owner know that there's going to be an enforcement order issued?
The new owner knows there's a current order of conditions and wants a certificate of compliance first, so knows that this has to take place. This will fall on the old owner, the current owner, to complete the enforcement order, so. The new owner won't be inheriting any type of, you know, enforcement issue. So that's how Brandon thinks it'll work, so.
So the enforcement order goes to the present owner,
Right,
but then the property gets sold?
right.
And then the
And
present
then-
owner moves to California, how do you make sure the work gets
Right,
done?
if we wanna let the current owner talk, we've had a lot of discussions about this, but I don't know if you.
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly,
So I'm sorry, for the record, sir, you're,
oh, I'm sorry, Jen's back. I live at 49 Seaside Road.
yeah,
I don't know whether the buyer, based on what decision you made, will buy the house or not. This all just came up, so I certainly understand that. From the attorneys, and from working with Pat this week, there is, I think the recommendation is get a certificate of compliance as the way the house was built. Tommy McCarthy from Marchville built the house. It was built according to plans. What I have done over the years, because it's been 8 years, is done some landscaping and things like that, which now have to be taken a look at. So I don't know, I doubt whether I can close, quite honestly, on Thursday, because I just don't think, if it was me, and I
Right.
think the people on the board would agree, they're gonna wanna see how much things have to be changed. Pat and I have talked about the fact that although the shed is built with the right setbacks and the size and so forth, because it's now in a velocity zone, it wouldn't get permitting, so that would have to come down. But I don't know whether the house sale, quite honestly, will still exist or not.
Can't one just condition the certificate of compliance?
There's a statement in there, in that letter, that Brandon made a suggestion to, a similar kind of thing, in that by no way we're saying this is a complete certificate of compliance on your property. There's still something that's remaining to be done. We're gonna take care of it in an enforcement order. And that's in there, so, but that's a good point, you know. We could walk, you know, it's a clean bill.
I'm just thinking that I mean, as much as I appreciate the issue, and we're trying to find a way to solve this, it would seem like we would, if what you're looking to do is issue a certificate of compliance for the house, the work that was completed that we had the orders on, then that's reasonable that we could issue that. But it almost seems like we simultaneously have to issue this notice for the violation or
Enforcement order, right,
enforcement
right,
order,
right.
not now, and it really just gets issued to the property owner and the property, so that it's there, and so that the prospective, otherwise it just gets moved on without an issue. And like you say, maybe some of these things can be worked out with a little bit of time and hopefully not too much expense. You know, they can figure out what things need to be changed, or maybe some things aren't that significant. But to say that this is just the issue of the fellow, the owner that's selling the house and on their way, I think would be a little remiss on our end.
Yeah, I mean.
Unless there was either, quite honestly, I'd like to leave it up to between the buyer and the seller, and, you know, if the buyer wants to say, well, you know what, I want $5,000 put in escrow or something to that effect till it's sorted out, then that would be I mean, that's their issue.
I think that's what
Can I
both
identify
the term.
myself as the buyer?
Sure.
Apologize. So, just full disclosure.
Yeah,
I wish my lawyer were with me,
and your name is, ma'am?
but my name is Marita Carpenter.
Okay. So, you're.
Yeah, escrow is
So if
definitely a
there's
possibility.
some amount of money that's held, but that's up to almost them. It's like this, you know, we can do a certificate of compliance for the project as it was submitted. At the same time, we're gonna give you a violation, or, you know, so that everybody knows what the remaining pieces are. And then, you know, if the seller wants to escrow some money and say, look, if we can get this worked out, you know, then that's the case. If not, you're gonna wind up coming before the commission to deal with these violations.
Well, the question that
Because
I
people
asked-
have inherited them before. Sometimes what happens is an attorney or a bank or somebody doesn't pick up that this isn't done. You know, some folks are quick enough to pick it up. Other times properties pass and you know, the next two owners down all of a sudden discover they've got a problem on their property that they inherited from 10 years ago. You know, they had no idea it was even an issue, and then all of a sudden, you go to do something at your home, a couple of years from now, you file with the commission, we go out to look at it and say, oh, by the way, you know, the shed's not supposed to be here, and these things here, and you're like, I don't know, I bought the house that way when I got it. So sometimes it never gets picked up, unfortunately for you.
Well, the thing that I talked to Pat about today is the timing, so I could let you guys know of when a made on those conditions or what were good or not. So at least the carpenters had some idea what they were up against, so they could make a decision whether they wanted it or didn't want it from that standpoint.
Because these don't seem, as you point out, I mean, they're not, the engineer brought them to our attention, the engineer that went out and looked at the site, you know, and he has to do that. I mean, he goes
Yeah, I
out,
understand.
looks at the property, says, yeah, the property was built the way it was supposed to. It's really these changes that were made, that, you know, over the course of time.
8 years,
Right.
right, the landscaping and stuff.
And I don't see any big flagrant violation here. I mean, these are just things that maybe you should have been aware of that going through that, but.
Well, as I said, I explained to Pat today, I was certainly aware of what it's like about building, because when we bought the house originally, the town had asked us to take up the concrete pad, because they didn't want that, we did that. Then the town asked us to completely take the foundation out, because it was built on 3 concrete walls after the storm of '78. So when we bought the house, we had no idea that the town would even object to that. So in the end, last year, we had to take the entire foundation out and put it in on pilings.
Oh.
Then I had to have a botanist come in to do an evaluation that the building wouldn't hurt the vegetation. Well, if you've been out to my property at all, there's nothing but stones there. Then, because of the settling after the construction, we had to bring it back to the elevation of the height of there. I had to bring in 10 tons of stone that was hand carried in and spread out. So my point to Pat was, I've been through this body before, so I had no idea that to do landscaping things that I had, and I've taken painstaking care of the property. Pat's been there. I would have never, knowing that I was gonna be, you know, questioned on these things, I would have never done it. I just had
Okay.
never. So that's why I know that we have to address these issues, but in fairness to the carpenters, I felt that we needed, Pat and I talked about, you know, if you can come out with whomever from the committee, make an evaluation and determine what we have, so at least I could be forthright to the carpenters
Sure.
and what has to be done.
I want to plead complete ignorance of the conservation rules, but what are the chances that, you know, when we buy, maybe we escrow just to close and fix this all, the chances that things can stay the way they are? I mean, how serious are violations?
The shed's gotta go.
The shed is considered a structure with a roof, sides and a roof, that wouldn't be allowed for velocity. That's-
So what,
Well, you could go to an
Want a
engineer,
variance?
could she put it up on piers or something?
I asked.
I asked
Yeah.
Pat that, because what I didn't do is because I know you can't dig when you're at the oceans, up and down there. So what we just did is we put it on concrete blocks.
Yeah.
So it could be raised and lifted and put up, but again, the question is how high it would have to be for water flow. So I asked Pat that question.
And the tricky part with a shed is that size, you don't need a building permit.
That's what
We
happened.
don't. I didn't need to check it because we didn't want to make it big. And I did comply with all the setbacks according to the town. So I thought I was doing everything right, so I wouldn't have to come again, so.
Right.
That's the way it is, so.
Welcome to Concom.
Yeah. Um,
But one of the other ones that were on there as a condition was the amount of planting that was required, and I think it was beach grass planting. He's done some of that, but it may not be the square footage that was asked for on the order of conditions, so that might be something that, if it can't be done there and it has to be done somewhere else, maybe we do get an escrow and say, 700 more feet of planting, or maybe the beach grass could be put in there and it would help.
Yeah, there's all rows that goes in there, and then mating
Usually-
form seagrass into beds, and the planting beds that we did in the other area and so forth. So.
Sometimes there's a way to work some things out with like that, just to change some of the plantings or something. So that's not a big deal. And you may be able to find a way, I can't say for certain, but if it was helical piers or something, if you really needed the shed and it was worth it to do that, but that could get a little more involved for you.
There's no basement, I need a shed.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they do have, I think as long as the shed's up enough,
Yeah, it might have to be up,
Yeah.
the height of the top floods.
But if it has to be up at the height of the lot, because Pat mentioned that to me today, then I'm sure that
That's
they
it.
would- they wouldn't want that up there.
You need a
anymore.
ladder.
Wouldn't want that.
Because I think there's new elevations now, right, that has actually gone up probably from 8 years ago when we built from that standpoint, so.
And there's no alternative elevations. There's just the required elevation.
yeah. Huh.
So if that is the case, the fact, I would assume that, the shed would be up
Right.
6, 7, 8 feet, which would make it inaccessible, because then we'd have to do something.
Can't we just have one member of the committee go out with Pat and?
I did go.
You've gone?
Yes.
And you have a list of those things that you think need?
Well, the engineer did them, so.
Well, the engineer did,
them,
but.
and, it was very obvious, and I'm not the best expert, but it was very obvious the shed's a problem, a real problem. And not because it isn't nice, doesn't look good or anything, it's beautiful, but it goes. If there's water, it's gonna go. It already did once, I believe. Am I correct? It moved with the storm now, the shed?
No, the shed did move. Sometimes we lose stone dust because it sits on stone dust, but it did move because it's.
All right, well, I'm all for doing the certificate of compliance, and then they can work out the stuff.
Yeah, I can get out there this week too. If they have a meeting later in the week, I can go out tomorrow, send you guys something in writing, a draft of
That's fine.
what might satisfy. The other request at one point was, well, come in and do the notice of intent, but you really have to go the enforcement order route, because the notice of intent only if something would have been allowed anyway.
Yeah.
This, you come in with a notice of intent with this, it wouldn't have been allowed, so you
Yeah,
really
right.
gotta go the enforcement order. It sounds punitive, but it's the way you have to approach this.
Well, Penny's not here, so we're all pretty friendly about that. Okay. So do we need to actually vote that, or you can just?
You need to vote to issue the certificate.
Can I get a motion to issue the certificate of compliance to 49 Seaside for the project that was conditioned?
So moved, if that's sufficient.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Do you want me to read what he said, or is it? Nah, we can just say that.
All right, we'll write that in.
Yeah, we can work it out.
That was the language I showed you about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So you'll give us a
Yeah.
memo or?
Yeah, email. you
Email.
it, Yeah.
Well, you're still smiling.
You're moving to Upland, that's why he's smiling.
What?
You're moving to Uplands.
Yeah.
Hey, I believe in Cohasset, so this is a piece of cake.
Okay,
Thank you.
great, good luck.
Okay. Okay, so you'll call me?
Yeah, I'll come by.
Wait, movie.
Okay,
all right.
And if
Thank
I,
you.
okay. You want to have your attorney call us?
Yeah, that'd be my husband's.
Oh, okay,
that'd-
all
yeah,
right,
you
sure.
can-
Escrow just won't pay out.
Yeah. It's a decorating budget involved here.
Thank you.
Wow.
It's quite the house. Richard and Aaron's side.
Okay, so the other things on the agenda, so I don't forget the ones that I asked to be added. Is there actually anything else, Pat, you want to do, any agents report, or have you got
Well,
anything?
you know, there's several people who come in and say, do I need to file on this? And, you know, some of them, my opinion would be, yeah, they need to file, but I should run them by you, and if you guys want to take a look at a couple of sites before they file. I mean, that's what I've done in the past, is I've gone out and taken a look and then say, yeah, you could probably do an RDA, or you could do an NOI, rather than have them file the RDA to find out if they need to do an NOI. So I have 2 or 3 that people have called, and if anybody wants to go out. I emailed Frank with a couple of addresses, one on Ocean Road, Ocean Drive, up by Minot, and then there was another one on First Parish Road. And so there's a few that people want to take a look at.
If one of you guys has
Is
some
that
time?
is that the issue, just going out?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do it that way, you want me to go look at them and then, you know, give you a short write-up of what it is. I mean, one of them looks like the wetland was flagged, but there's an area of lawn kind of in between 2 wetland areas that might have been just planted on wetland soils, and I would say, you know, before we tell someone, we should do a couple of soil samples out there, just to make sure that the wetland is flagged the way it, because.
I can go out on Wednesday.
Well, why don't you work it out with Pat?
What's the address?
That one is on, it's on First Parish, down on the left. Don't have the number in front of me. But, it was just an informal discussion. What do you think we need to do? So,
Do they want a new build, or what?
they're probably gonna wanna do that. They didn't get into the details. It may not be, it may just be, you know, a pool or something. They're gonna come in, they are gonna file,
Oh, they
but,
are gonna
yeah,
file
they're gonna
something.
file.
It's just a
right,
question of
right.
what to
Whether
file.
file RDA or NOI.
Right.
And if it's a septic,
So I think for a couple of
Oh,
people,
it's a septic?
no, I said if it were a septic and they've flagged it, I mean, you know, we know where they're gonna have to put it, so it's really not, just a matter of taking a soil sample.
all right, well, why don't you, if you and Tony can, I think that's relevant, you know, a couple of people to give Pat an idea of what we think should go one way or the other.
Right. He has been doing it together as a board for a while, so you might have a certain way you'd like to see something handled, so.
Okay.
Well, if it's gonna be that it's a minor impact, then the RDA is kind of where we've been.
Right.
But if it's a new build, or if the septic's come on NOIs, I don't even think they ask.
Right, but then we've had some things that are so little, you know, there isn't even an RDA, you know, someone
Right,
needs to
right.
pour 1 footing in an
Yeah,
existing
right.
footprint of a deck or something, and,
Right.
you know,
Mhm.
And on those, I'd be glad to check them out and then email you, rather than have them go through an RDA or an NOI if it's not needed.
And that's
Right.
fine, you know, I think sometimes to overkill is just pain, so that's fine.
We talked about it in Hanover, we had what was called a minor activities permit. It was something small in nature, you know, you have one sonotube that they need to replace, and it happens to be within the buffer.
Right.
Yeah.
Set of steps or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not gonna impact a resource area, but technically it's within the area where people would file, but you kinda use your head and you save your.
right,
you know,
little
you work
common
with a
sense
real
rule.
Tough, yeah.
Yeah.
so.
I'm good with that. To get on to more critical things. All right. Anything else?
No, I was just gonna say that Conway thing I thought that was pretty good the other night.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but just before we jump to that one, because that could take up a little bit of time. I got cornered by someone that lives in the Indian Trail neighborhood, and now that we've acquired the Hubble piece, this is on, in the North Scituate area. We've acquired a piece of open space, and they're curious to know what we'd like to, what our plans are for that. And my thinking was, once we got this report from the Conway School, that maybe we could use that as a little bit of a footprint. But I think in the case of the Hubble property, there's almost a trail that already runs through there, and it's adjoining some land that we already have. So I said to this person, I said, you know, if you've got some folks in the neighborhood and you've got an interest in what you want to do, get together, and then maybe a couple of us will come out and meet with you and talk about this. It's pretty straightforward. If they wanted to, there's already sort of a trail. There's actually a trail mapped on the Hubble property that we bought. So it wouldn't be that hard to find that. And it's, then depending on whether your neighborhood wants to clear a small footpath, or you want to wait till, a scout needs a project and we can, ask them if that's the one that they want to take on. They could start to get this little footpath established through that.
Is that what they want to do?
I think that's the thought, is that, what's gonna happen with it. It's really a pretty piece of property for anybody that had a chance to, when we were acquiring it with CPC. There's a lot of ledge, it's quite nice. But it's something that should at least have a little bit of planning and marking, and then we can agree on that. So if we hear from somebody from Indian Trail or a group, the next month or so, we can, maybe a couple of us can just take a look and see if we can start with something simple there. It's not a big piece of property, and I just don't see it
Get Howard.
getting, well, I think he's got enough projects. So that was just something that's come up, and I think we'll want to address it, because it is a piece that we've acquired. And I think with any of these, we just have to be careful. So we do some things on these that we don't adversely affect somebody else, as a butter or another piece of property or whatever, that we find out that someone's been afflicted by what we've allowed somebody else to do. So we'll take a look. And then on the Appleton Field, we had the chance when we were out with the students. Vin Bucher was at his field, so when we finished up on Friday, we spent a little time with Vin, and we talked about where we might continue the access once we developed a parking lot for Crosby, how we'd continue the access into his field. And he explained to them what he was doing, and he showed them the field and all the different process. But the other thing with Appleton is he's looking to renew his license. And I think right now he has a 3-year license.
You're talking about the lease he has with us?
We can't call it a lease.
That's right.
We did that wrong the last time.
Yeah, sorry.
License.
License. We
What are you
can
talking
license a farmer, but we can't lease him the land. We can license him to farm the property, is what we learned from Mac and the other attorneys and the pigs and everything else that went on. So, he's anxious to get this license. And I'd just like to take the time to look at that license and make sure that it's quite clear that we're not committing to a specific access, because we're gonna change it. And then just look at the uses. I mean, he seems willing to allow people to come onto the property and do some educational programs and things, but we have to keep in mind that it is property that's owned by all the residents of the town of Scituate. Not that if he puts the time and effort into growing things and stuff, they just can't go out there and pick them, but that people would want to be able to maybe walk onto that. So we just need to think a little bit about what that says. Maybe we can sometime, Pat, in the next couple weeks, dig out that license. Maybe you and I can read through it, or it just
Is
make.
that at the end of Clap Road, all the way through?
No.
This is, you and I are gonna get out there someday. But the Appleton, if you go up Clap Road, it would be to the south. The majority of the land that we talk about is off Bates Lane, in back of 214.
Okay, oh yeah.
And all those sort of things. But this is up a little bit further, and it's on the south side of Clap Road, and it goes into the South Swamp. And once we acquire the Crosby piece, it's adjoining that, and the new access road that we're gonna have go in there, and all that kind of all pulls together. So, this was an overgrown field that we acquired with CPC money 5 or 6 years ago, Carol, maybe more? Wow. So, we've just licensed it to this fellow to do some growing, because there's really not good access to it. So, rather than be thinking we're gonna have a lot of the public in there, we just haven't done a lot with it. But now that we're acquiring this larger piece, and we have good access, then we'll think about maybe some things we can do. So you and I need to look at that and see if we're in agreement.
Frank, I was thinking if either of these pieces that you and I are gonna talk about are out in the west end, we could drop by and I could,
Yeah,
Sure.
yep,
I don't know.
Yeah.
that'd be great.
I have one question about that. So we build the road to the parking lot for access to Crosby,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's gonna be an additional road to improve access to Appleton.
Or new, it'll be different than the road that goes in now.
Okay, so it may or may not be improved, but it's still gonna be.
Yep.
What I'm wondering though is the public is gonna become more aware of that property out there. If we give Mr. Buca a 3-year license, what happens if 2 years from now, all of a sudden, somebody in town's like, well, I wanna farm out there too, or I mean, does he have license to the whole entire property, like from, is there any restriction on where he can?
He does at the moment.
Yeah.
It's like the whole, whatever, how
whole
many ever
Appleton
acres it
property,
is the whole thing.
My guess is, I mean, 3 years seems like a long time, but, I mean, 7 years ago that I think I got on this commission and we issued him a lease, which then we found out was
Was
inappropriate, but I can't believe that was 7 years ago. So, I mean, if we license this, it allows him to do some planning and do some planting and make a little bit of investment in the land. And I think by the time we get to that point, then we'll surely have our road in. If the sustainable Scituate or the piece that we have over here isn't large enough, unless we want to write into this license, the commission reserves the right at some point to take back a portion of this field. But this guy has cleared a lot of this basically in a eco-friendly way. I mean, he's used very little heavy equipment. He was using animals and clearing it by hand,
I mean, I was just curious, I haven't
Well,
found it, I got lost, so.
And the other part is, we've had a couple other commercial farmers express interest until we tell them, well, it's because it's our property, we want it farmed organically, and then, if they can't nuke it, nobody really wants to.
Well, it's incredibly difficult to have an organic farm.
Yeah,
The
so.
prices to get it certified, make it.
And I think, at least for the time being, I think it's probably appropriate that we consider that.
It was just something that came across my mind. What if all of a sudden people become like, let's be self-sufficient here in town and grow a bunch of food on our own land?
There may be a point where, I think right now we still have some spare lots at this sustainable Scituate. I don't think they've filled all that out, but at some point, and maybe
Oh, the
that's.
Community garden,
Yeah, that's where we want to take a look at the lease and say, should we leave ourselves an option? But, quite honestly, if someone's come in and say, well, geez, I want that, you say, fine, you can have it, but you can have the back part that hasn't been brushed out yet,
Mm-hmm.
and see how anxious they
See
are
how they
for
get
it.
into it, yeah.
Or, I mean, if he
Well,
has,
the options are
if he
good.
has the license, this is the date that the license comes up and you can apply.
Right. Right,
I don't
and,
think 3 years is very long.
yeah, and
No, it's not.
3 years from now, someone might say, geez, I've got a grander plan, and we'd like to put
Yeah.
this sort of investment in, and at that point, then we could reconsider it, so.
Options are
He has a
good.
forestry management plan then through the state? or
No,
is
this
it
is just,
through the town?
this is just a farming, oh, he does? Oh,
Cause then,
I thought I remember saying
yeah, cause the town has can comment on those, and if you want a small area cleared, or if you only want hardwoods cleared, or you want the pine, I mean, there's a lot of input you can give on
Okay.
those, so.
well, there's not much forest on, I mean, this was
Oh,
just a
it's
field.
okay.
Yeah.
It's
So-
cleared most of it.
But actually, I shouldn't say that, because the back part of it, there is a small piece that's forested, so.
It's pretty small.
Right,
that. Yeah, trail.
you're right,
Whatever
as
happened-
usual. Take that in.
Frank, whatever happened to his request to get reimbursed for killing whatever the weed?
The vinegar?
Western-
I don't think we bought it. I don't remember
It
buying it.
just died a natural death, so to speak?
I guess.
Good. Okay.
But it is, I mean, I guess I didn't even appreciate it as much until the other day when I'm there with his kids and he's filling them in on, and I say kids, they're young adults, and sort of going through what he's been doing
He's
out there.
worked his tail off out
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
He really
so
has.
it was a nice exchange, I have to
Yeah.
admit. So then, but the real piece with the Conway School, as Pat points out, I think we had a great meeting. Tony was there, and Steve, and Carol. And, you know, I was happy to see the number of people that showed up and had an interest. And at this point, it was just gathering people's input, you know, what are your interests and how do you want to use it? And it still ran the gauntlet from, you know, some of the local folks that were like, well, we don't want any more trails or too many people out there now.
I thought they did it very well in that they kept all the controversy out of what they were after. They wanted information, and they got the information. And some people didn't like the way they did it, but I thought they got the information very quickly and got out of there before anybody killed anybody else.
You weren't in the back of the room.
And he's half deaf.
Things were going on back there.
No, it was fine.
People in the front of the room just left.
It was fine. It was fine. No, I think for this, you know, I mean, it's a phased piece, so this one is to gather that information. They've also been getting input from outside, you know, emails and things like that. So, you know, the next time we meet, they're gonna have recommendations, and that might spur a little more discussion. But I think everybody, in general, that's been up there and appreciates it, understands that there's some give and take, and we're gonna get to that point in a civilized manner, I hope. Steve?
Can I just make a comment? If there's any commission members that haven't gone through the trail system out there, they actually pick a day and go, maybe get a few of you together if you haven't seen it. Because once you walk around it once, it takes probably 2 hours to really do a good job going through on a Saturday. It's well worth the walk out there. It's definitely worth the walk. And go with somebody that's, you know, that's been out there and they can take right around the whole thing. But, you know, then when people come in with, you know, different, where do we put the parking and things like that, you'll get a much better idea of what's going on out there.
You'd be surprised, you're in Scituate, and you're standing on TP Rock looking on this little cliff that looks down into this valley, like, wow, I'm in Scituate.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat.
It's a huge cliff. It's not
Yeah.
a little cliff, it's big.
They found some rock formation, and I'm no geologist, so I can't remember, but one of the gals is studied a lot of geology, and there was some different type of rock than you'd normally found, and she plugged back a piece to Conway.
All right.
She in the Friday morning was with Tom Rowinski was with U.S. Forest Service, but his expertise is sort of how much damage a large deer herd can do to a property. And he pointed out a whole bunch of stuff that I hadn't even noticed, all the different trees that would nip down, and
Oh, really?
yeah, it was pretty interesting. And you know, he cited some places where it was real bad, like, you know, the Quabbin Reservoir, where, you know, the thing was basically off limits to humans, and got to a point where there was not any little stubble that started to grow, that, you know, the deer cleaned it right out.
Yeah.
And we're nowhere near anything like that, but it was really informative. Plus, he took the time to explain about a lot of the different trees.
Who was this guy?
Tom Rowinski, I think I've got that right, and he's with, I'll forward his links on, and we cruised a good-sized piece of property, and they had contacted him.
Oh, they had contact.
Yeah.
Oh, he was the guy that the young man mentioned.
Yeah.
He didn't mention
He
the name.
he lives in Durham, New Hampshire now, and he came down in the morning and was willing to spend a lot more time as long as we could send him to where he could buy lobsters when he was all done. He was pretty happy. He was very helpful, and it's a service that we can call up and ask for without any cost.
Well, I think anyone interested should know that they can send emails to the Conway School, and Carol, you have the email address, I think, don't you? So they can contact you, because these people are still looking for information, looking for data
Right.
on how it's used and how, you know, how individuals might want to see it changed or used or whatever. So anybody who wants should be able to send an email to them.
Yeah. And then in the afternoon, I went with one of the, Noah Zimmerman is one of the students, And so he and I, like, traversed the South Swamp a couple of times, and it wasn't that wet, and we actually walked from Appleton Field through to First Parish, and then moved down and came back again, and
You're kidding.
no, we found a couple of great stands of white cedar still existing in the swamp, and really nice stands of cedar that he could see in an aerial photo, and so we set out to
Oh, so
find
you
them.
wanted to find it?
Yeah, and some other pieces that are out there, so we zigzagged a couple times and came back up on the Crosby piece, and Anna and Emily were taking inventory in a couple more sections of Crosby, so they've become pretty familiar with the property in the short time that they've been here. They covered a lot of ground the few days they were in Scituate.
Good.
So it'd be interesting to see.
What they come up with.
Yeah, I mean, I may be putting too much into this, but I'm hopeful that it will give us a good footprint to work from.
Yeah, I think the question is what do we do with it after we get it? But
Well-
we cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah, I mean, they could clearly see where, like, these stands of red pine are that are just deteriorated, you know, they're matured and they're now rotting. And so I think it was, you know, for some folks to understand that maybe we could have a section that we might actually harvest some wood, either for firewood that residents could purchase, or, you know, maybe some wood could be sold to the sawmill in Norwell, and, you know, boards could be made into it. And then a couple places like habitat enhancement, if we decide that, you know, we want to have emerging growth, so that we can see some upland game return to an area. You know, smaller rabbits, grouse, things, you know, that have been lost now that we have a larger
Yeah.
understories, or lack of an understories. Yeah,
It's good.
so there's a whole bunch of things that we can do, and I think a lot of them are low cost or no cost, or we can get a grant or some CPC funds to do that. And I think it'll bring more people for different reasons onto the property, you know? Someone wants to do some mountain biking or some more birding, and there can be other animals to see, or maybe someone has a hunting dog they want to train, or something. I don't really care, you know, as long as it's sensitive to what's out
Yeah,
there.
right. See how it works.
Anybody else? Mr. Barris?
It's good.
What's this snow fence thing?
Oh, jeez.
Is that a big issue I didn't want to bring up?
So the snow fence that got put up at Peggy Beach got knocked down by the storms.
Oh,
And some of the residents over there are concerned that it's, you know, people are walking up on the dune and all that stuff. So somehow we gotta get that snow fence back up.
this is our snow fence, not
Right.
the,
So whether we wanna fund some of that through our, which fund, Carol?
or $12,500, that one?
So we do need to buy some poles and some fencing, and then maybe we can find some volunteers or something to put it up. So I think if we get an idea of how much that's gonna be and everybody's in agreement, we'll get some more material.
Do it.
Pat?
Is this the person that was at the last meeting?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think if we can agree that we'll purchase what, I mean, I think some of it can be resurrected. And then some of it we need to look at and decide if we want to use some wood poles rather than the metal poles. Some of that got put up, that was some mitigation money from another project, and it just, unfortunately, the timing was bad, and it just got wiped out. But that can happen, you know?
No question.
She said she would help, didn't
Right.
she? So we could, I mean, it sounds like she'd have volunteers.
Well, I think that was our hope, is that we get some of the neighbors to sort of get interested in that, and if we had to buy some of the materials or could get that
I
acquired.
mean, that would be a good use of the money, I mean.
Yep. So maybe we'll just take an inventory of what we need and get some stuff, all right?
Who's going to be the contractor in the group?
I'll try to take a look. Pat and I can do that. Once he learns how to count them, then I won't have to go out anymore. All right,
The one last thing, the addition to filing guidelines, adding something in the RDA or NOI about flagging the 50-foot or the limit of clearing. I just wanted to bring that up. I felt like it would be helpful in the field if we actually knew where the limit of clearing was.
There have been so many instances where people have taken advantage of the situation, either before or after. I agree. I think we should put that in our orders.
Who's gonna flag it?
I mean, I think it should be firmly flagged and at the 50-foot level, and maybe even at the 100.
I mean, would it be egregious to ask the applicant to put
I
in
don't
one
think
more
so.
set of flags? I mean, just in the field, to me, it would be tremendously helpful to know exactly where they were gonna clear to.
Well, if they're actually gonna clear to a plan, they have to, somebody has to demarcate.
But that's after we see it.
Right, no, but I'm saying, so you wouldn't really be making them do additional work.
Right. It
You
would
go
just be
into
doing
a
it so we
5-acre
can see it.
parcel and you're gonna clear to the limit of work, somebody has to demarcate where to clear to.
Right.
What you can do too is before they put down the erosion controls, you could ask to see stake locations in the field, because once they have the erosion control in place, it's very hard to move it. So
Yeah.
we used to ask them, you know, stake out where you're gonna put it, we'll walk it, if we agree with it, then you can put it out and then take pictures, you know, and rather than see it after they've already put it in the field.
Yeah.
You're right, they'll clear too far, whoops, you know, I've gone too far where you might have been able to prevent it by walking it.
I think the Hillcrest Road property is a perfect example of this, though, where we're in a position now where we're waiting. We issued a set of orders that says you can do this project, but we have to see X before it can happen, and that's, we couldn't tell where they were gonna clear to, so we
Right.
didn't know if their proposed mitigation was gonna be stuff we actually wanted them to remove, which had they actually marked where the house was gonna be, I think we might have been able to make that decision without going to all
Right,
that
there's some
extra
projects you
steps.
almost don't need it, but then there's others like that where it's really key, you actually have to.
It would, on that one particularly, it
Right.
would have been, we might have saved us all that time, because now we have to have the agent go out, make sure it's gonna be, before it's written into the orders, that they have to have you go out and look at it, mark it, and then we have to go out and look at it to determine if we want it to be the mitigation or not.
Is this 119?
19 Hillcrest Road, maybe? That may be the one that you referred to about where I wrote on the
Right,
building
right.
permit.
Yeah.
You gotta see the conservation office before you,
Okay.
that's what the order states.
Oh, I thought we
wasn't
were,
making that up.
yeah, I thought we were holding up a building certificate on that, but this is just related to conservation, making sure that they do what they said they were.
Right, because they
Right,
couldn't
but if
show
we-
us where
Okay.
the limit of work line was, and that we were trying to decide where to put their plantings, but until you know where they're gonna clear to.
19 Hillcrest.
Yeah, that one, I mean, that's why I said, because the order states you can't do anything until,
Okay.
I mean, and obviously if they read their orders and they had the building permit, they wouldn't do anything, but maybe not. We didn't have an agent at the time either for them to call and have go out and check it.
So do you wanna, that's something you wanna try to
Yeah,
add
I
as we
think
go
so,
forward?
no, so addition, so it's not like the bylaw, in our conservation bylaw, at the beginning, there's a directions on how to file an NOI or how to file an RDA. And what I'm suggesting is that we add to those guidelines where it says, this is what we expect, you have to have 9 copies of this and all that stuff. We expect that the 50-foot line is gonna be flagged with the red flag. The limited clearing is gonna be yellow and the BVW is gonna be white, and just make it standard so that way they all do the same thing and it's just easier for everybody that has to go out and find it. Cause there'll
Right.
be one flag that says some guys and it's like he does his TP or then he does BVW and then he has his initials, and there could be some other pink flags from something else out there that I just think uniformity would be.
Right, and you could word it that you want to see the limit of work area on anything that isn't greater than 100 feet, or, put a number. Because you do sometimes get projects where a lot of it's in upland, and they just touch the 100 foot or something. All they need to flag then is
Yeah, I mean, the 100, yeah, I'm fine with that too. I'm mostly just.
Right, where it's relevant to us, yeah.
Yeah.
And they should be showing the limit of clearing on their submitted plan too, their proposed tree line and their existing tree line. So we should see something right off the bat, what they're hoping to do, and where they're hoping to clear.
Right, but what's tough is like we're in the field, you're looking at this completely
Yes.
vegetated lot, and you're saying, okay, what plants are coming out and what trees? Well, somewhere out there.
Yeah.
Sometimes they have the building corners staked. They'll have those triangular, right? Those help a lot. I mean,
Right.
so, but they don't always have those either. Because then you can at least stand and say, okay, this is that corner. Here's where I'm standing on the plan. This is that corner of the house. Now I understand it, but.
That might be in our requirements too. That might be in there when you file an NOI, stake out the corners of the structures. I think I've seen that here, so. But you're right, you go up to the site and you're lost. you
What's
know.
that?
I probably should have read the whole thing all the way through before I made.
Well, I don't know. I mean, no, but it makes sense to try to get that marked a little better. So
It
we'll
would
take
help,
that.
it really would. I'm not just being.
Mhm.
Is anybody else really hot up here?
Yeah, it's hot in here.
Yeah.
I got a motion.
All right, make-
Yes. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Done.